Hello there. Well, today I'm working in the townland of Castleboy, and it's a very historic place. And as I never did any Irish history, I thought I'll do a little bit on the history of Castleboy, which is pure Irish history. Now, I'm repeating a lot of what I have just been told and little bits of research, but it takes ages to do all this. So I'm just passing on basically what I've picked up. Now this is what's left of the old castle, as I said, and it's in the townland of Castleboy. Castleboy took in 1,350 acres altogether. Now all the wee townlands included that aren't all shoulder to shoulder. There's one or two, it's a bit of a distance away. So Castleboy is the main one where we're standing now. Dromurden is over behind me there up on the hill. That's Dromurden. And district and Drum Quarter. And Drum Quarter, where else have we? We have Broom Quarter. So that's Broom Quarter over that direction there. And Tully Cross, which is over the back there, just straight in front over the back of that hill, Tully Cross. And Balladum, or Ballyadam, as some would pronounce it, is over the back of this hill here. So it was quite an area, 1,350 acres. And this was the castle on it. Castleboy was also known as St. John's Village here. Now there was a whole community here, but we'll go into that a wee bit later. This is my audience today. Now, as I have said, it was also known as St. John's Village here. And this keep or little castle was actually 63 feet by 21, just a rectangle, and it was fortified, obviously safe place to live. So later on in time, when Henry VIII came to power, and of course we all know that part of our history, that he fell out with the Pope because he was wanting rid of his wife basically, and then he dissolved the monasteries, or the dissolution of the monasteries I think is the proper term for it, and he claimed all the ground that the Pope had anything to do with, the monks and all the rest, and he turfed everybody out of that, and he claimed it, and then he set himself up as head of the Church of England. So it all became property of the crown in that point in time, but we're going back before that. I'm going to take you up to the chapel up here to have a little look just at the foundation. Now just directly in front of us here we have the outline of the chapel foundations, and this little hawthorn's growing in it here, so you can see it's raised up. It's quite a size. This is the northern wall of it here. Odd bits of stones and that still in it, but there you are. That's the old chapel. Now I think the graveyard was somewhere around here as well, and Hugh John Smith, who is the local farmer here who's owned this ground, he ploughed up bones when he's ploughing. I'm talking about Hugh John Smith, who was maybe 150 years ago, not everybody named their sons John or Hugh John, but we're talking about 150 years ago when he was ploughing up bones here and there, human bones obviously. So he took them down to the castle down at the corner there, and he put the bones in around the bottom of that standing wall. Now when the Normans invaded Dublin, they lived in an area, they sort of fenced themselves an enclosure called the Pale, and at that point in time they were starting to conquer Ireland, so they had came up to County Down, captured it. John de Courcy was the leader of it. He was given 22 knights, and of course they would have had a string of men at arms as well with them. So they came up here, captured Down and Antrim. Now, whenever they were doing conquests like that, it was a very bloody affair. After all the murder and everything else done, they decided to gift a bit of ground to the church, sort of thing, as a kind of a penance type thing, if you know what I mean. So Castleboy was gifted in that manner, so it was. Now, in those days, there was a weekly market held here at Castleboy, and the feast of St. John the Baptist, which was Midsummer's Day, was it? Yeah. Yep. They had a special big event here annually. So it gives you a little idea how many people were in and around here. But the reason for that, you'll see it. Now, I'm just thinking, maybe this isn't the safest place to be standing or sitting. In 1628, Bishop Eklund took over what they called the Bishop's Lease, and it fell into the hands of the Church of Ireland then, obviously. So Bishop Eklund, also the name Eklundville rings a bell with you, and also the Abbacy, just outside Portaferry there, that was his congregation. So there you are. That's the chapel, and the graveyard, I don't know, I'm assuming it would be round the walls of the chapel and in thereabouts. And then Hugh John Smith, when he was playing 150 years ago, he lifted any bones and put them in the foundation of the remaining wall standing there. Now, just as a matter of interest, as a farmer, you remember a few years ago, the farmers got notification that there would be an aeroplane flying over low. It was a geological aeroplane. It was catching what was below the ground with whatever way it was doing it. But I remember getting a letter as a farmer, and anyway, somewhere down the back here, just about where my tractor's sitting down the back, it was said that whoever was in the know found out that that aeroplane, as it flew over, did the geological survey, it picked up down where my tractor is there, metallic, and they reckon that was where the smithy shop was, where all the shodding of the horses and pulling the nails out. There's a lot of metal lying, and they were able to pick that up in that aeroplane that was flying over doing that geological survey. Just out of interest. I'm just going to give these hedges a little bit of a trim up here. It's really quite wet, even in dry ground, which this is. The cattle have been running up and down here. It's a strange thing. Now, as you know, I went away to live in Australia for a few years just after I was sort of second form at school, and I thought to myself when I come home and I was working through the fields here and seeing these sort of things, I says, I missed out on all that bit of history. Of our Irish history. But anyway, everybody else tells me now that they never heard any of this sort of history either. But I suppose when the Crown took over, they didn't want revealing to you that your forefathers were hounded and persecuted and that sort of thing. And the education system was held by the Church of Ireland, and it was a tax collector really for the Crown. So they weren't going to tell you that, you know, we came and captured and murdered. But that's part of history. It doesn't matter where you're at, what country you're in, Europe, here, anywhere. It's history is all a very bloody story, death, displacement, you know, so there you are. But that's us back down here again at the old keep. It's an amazing thing. It used to be a wee stone sat at the very top of it there, and it has fallen down. And how it stands, I do not know. But anyway, It stood the test of time, let me tell you. Now, when we've heard there that the Normans came and captured Dublin and then came up and captured down in Antrim, and those knights all come up with their footmen and all with them, and then the ground here was gifted to the church as a sort of an appeasement, if you would put it that way, for all the murder that had gone on, for want of a better word. So there was two groups of knights. There was one group which was based here, which was called the Hospitallers. Now, they were sort of medically trained folks, and they were soldiers as well, but they only used that if they needed to defend the folk they were looking after. Now, Hospitallers obviously gives away that they were medical, and when teams went out on the crusades to the Holy Land, these folk, Hospitallers, had set up camps, medical camps, to look after any pilgrims which were travelling there. So we're talking away from, the Crusades happened over a couple of hundred years as far as I know. So, but we're talking about the 1100s. So that was the one group. The other group were solely soldiers, and they were the knights who wore the white cape with a big red cross on it. So, but the Pope favoured the Hospitallers, and there was supposed to be no rent charged to them and that type of thing. So they were in favour with the Pope, and then they set up their different camps here and there wherever they were going to. So it's hard to imagine. Just across the field there is a bungalow. I'll let you see it. Just about where that car went by there, that was the man Frank Denver. Now Frank I was trimming his hedges one year, and he was leaving me out of what all he had gathered up was information on the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers and what was going on here locally. And he told me that there was up to 1,000 people gathered here when they were getting ready to ship out to the Holy Land, pilgrims, warriors and whatever. So you can imagine why, you can imagine on this piece of ground we're standing, the amount of people that would have been here. You would have had to have like a village almost, for people needed to be fed and everything else. Now, when you were as a pilgrim heading out to the Holy Land and you came to here, these knights had their own currency, and you could exchange it here. And when you got to the Holy Land or to wherever stopping points and you went to the Hospitallers' camps, you could trade with that currency, which was picked up here at Castleboy. So it's some amazing little things you never would think of as you're cutting the hedges in the field here and working in the farmland round about. If you live in the locality of Castleboy at all, you will know that the name Smith is a very common name. Now, we all have in our history, if we look back, your grandfather was called John, he called his son John, and the next one called his son John, and it goes on till there's 20 Johns about the place. So it was similar, and the Smith name goes way back into those times that we're talking about. So in local terms, the Smiths, Jimmy Smith's sons as I would have known them, and that group of Smiths, they were known by the nickname the Whitesides. And Kevin Smith, who is up here and whose forefathers owned this part of ground here, they were called the Green Men. So, when you had so many people of the same name, that's how they distinguished them at that time. Now, in those crusading days, one of the priory men here, he decreed that any of his tenants in the Castleboy townland here, none of them would have to pay the tithe into the church until he came back. But the man never returned. So it is said that the tenants still don't pay a tithe in Castleboy. I'm going to check up on that Collie Smith, for I don't think he's paying any tithe either, the rascal. And there's another man over the back here in the townland. I would say he's not paying any tithe either. Just out the back here, he's behind that, his house is behind that bush over there. So that's the little bit of history from Castleboy that I am only finding out recently. I better get back to work here. I'll be getting sacked.
Friend unfailing, how dear art thou to me. Our cares or fears assailing, I find my strength in thee. Why should